experience, no individual politician and no political party should seek support purely because it is more Christian than somebody else's political party. I think there are believers in every political party, or every decent political party, and I think that should be valued as part of the inclusion in British life. So I make no claim that the Conservative Party is more Christian than any other, and therefore asking for your votes on that basis.
Jesus Christ is the answer. Jesus Christ is the answer for the individual, and Jesus Christ is the answer for our society. Of course, by saying that, it raises all sorts of issues, which I'd be very happy perhaps we had a chance to look at. What about our multi-faith, multicultural society?
We're going to, in the next couple of days, be putting up posters all around town saying Britain is a Christian nation. That's a fact. Vote to keep it that way. Our argument is very simple, that we have a sovereign queen, anointed as a Christian sovereign queen, and the parliament is her parliament. Therefore, it is a parliament of a sovereign Christian queen. And any other authority that flows from that parliament also is Christianized by the fact that we recognized in the coronation that Jesus Christ was King of Kings and Lord of Lords and Prime Minister of Prime Ministers.
In 1914, the start of the war, the new vicar of St. Martin-in-the-Fields, he stood on the west steps and he said, you know, I dreamt what this church could be in the life of the people. They passed me into its warm inside, thousands and thousands of people, and I asked them, where are you going? They said, we're going to find the place where the love of God can be found. So our churches must be the sources of Christian love in our communities.
And what I welcome very much is what seems to me to be a growing importance and influence of churches, church-based initiatives, initiatives which come from a starting point of faith in Jesus in communities right across the country in an extraordinary range of activities. I think it is the case, for example, that the majority now of the youth work taking place in the UK is carried out by the churches. And that's perhaps an example that we could all point to, but a whole panoply of activities, a very large proportion of asylum support projects, for example, around the country are run by the churches. Much of the very good welfare to work projects underway are being carried out by churches, with some great examples across London. And
I agree with it wholeheartedly, and I could see no reason why I wouldn't sign it.
I've had a chance to look at the Westminster Declaration. It isn't a document that I would sign, but I can certainly welcome much of the content of it.
Our faith and our life is a great deal more than a pledge made immediately before a general election. And I do think there should be a degree of tolerance and leeway in relation to that. So no, I would not be comfortable at signing it, although like Stephen, what it encapsulates is very much what someone like me with my background would believe.
I've signed it with alacrity, but it is limited. But it is limited not in the way that Alistair has mentioned. It is limited because it seems to me to be essentially conservative. It talks about protecting these values. I don't want to protect these values. I want to actively promote these values.
There's an education job to be done in our culture to try and make more people aware. I have to tell you, I get no letters, no comments from anyone who does not have a faith background about this at all. This is an issue which those people of faith, those of us, champion and talk about and vote about in the House of Commons. But I have to tell you, for those who don't have a faith background, it's very rare that this is issued. And I think that we all have a job to do to make people more aware of the circumstances surrounding it and try and get a message out there that in modern society there must be a better way to deal with the issue.
I didn't vote for change in the upper limit, although I do think we need to keep the science under review and the evidence under review as that develops. I welcome the focus that's brought on the sanctity of life in this question and by the churches in much of what we hear about on this topic. I think that is a very welcome emphasis and an important value, if you like, to be expressed loudly in our communities. I can't, though, commit to seeking the eradication of abortion, as the questioner asked.
I think it's time we actually got the whole abortion issue back onto the agenda. We started having a debate. We live in a democracy. We need to start debating it. We cannot accept the death of now 7 million unborn children, a great holocaust of unborn babies, and yet not debating it as a responsible and humane and Christianised society.
We, as a Christian party, and me personally, would ban abortion totally. We would ask doctors to first do no harm. There will be, of course, occasions where a baby is lost in the course of an operation to save mother and so on. But that, to me, is not abortion. That is a tragedy that occurs in the midst of a medical crisis. I do not support the idea of reducing the limit. I think that abortion is a death penalty, and I thought we didn't have the death penalty in the United Kingdom.
I'm sorry there is no woman on this panel, because men cannot feel the same way as women feel. And I can well understand those who will say, and we're men here, I think, that we would not have abortion under any circumstances at all. I want as few abortions as possible. But if anybody is raped, if anybody is underage and has been involuntarily made pregnant, then I think we must have that option.
Question, that sort of the suggestion in the question that marriage is kind of on the way out. I don't see that being the case. I do think it's right that we acknowledge in law civil partnerships in the way that the law does. But again, of course, there is a clear distinction between a civil partnership and a marriage. The language is different, and I think it is appropriate that the language is different. And I don't see a blurring of those two things in the way that the legislation has been introduced over the last few years.
And I think it is perfectly possible to promote marriage and to promote all the values of marriage and everything that we hold important in it, and yet at the same time recognise that civil partnerships are not a threat to that, and that in a sense both civil partnerships and marriage are about stability. They are different. The language is different. There's no argument on that. The law does not make them equivalent. There is a difference between the two. But at the heart is an attempt by society to try and value stability and commitment, which is something in so many ways over such a long period we have lacked, and the damage has been considerable. We spend a fortune on the consequences of brokenness in society, yet we spend hardly anything on promoting relationship work and keeping people together.
But I do object when it's suggested that my children should be taught at their state school that civil partnerships are in some sense morally equivalent to marriage. They are not. I do not want my children taught that. I tell them that it is simply untrue, and they're being taught untruth if that's what they're taught. And this comes back to my original point. The reason why I want to promote Christian values is not because I want to defend Jesus. He doesn't need defending from anybody else. Not because I want to protect the church, because the church doesn't need defending. It's because for society's sake it needs our Christian values. For our children's sake it needs our Christian values. And when this gay agenda, of which I said the civil partnership, just another milestone on the road of this triumphant march of the gay lobby, this gay agenda is trumping everything else, then our society and our children will suffer, and that is what is happening now.